The lawyer's words echoed in my skull like a death knell. "I'm sorry, Miss Camilla, but your mother's will is quite clear. The house goes to her sister, Daisy Thompson." I sat frozen in that leather chair, my fingernails digging crescents into my palms. The room smelled of old books and expensive cologne. My mother had been dead for 3 days. 3 days, and already they were carving up her life like vultures over a carcass. "That's impossible!" My voice came out strangled. "My mother would never—" "The will was updated 6 months ago." The lawyer, Mr. Hendricks, with his silver hair and pitying eyes, slid the document across his mahogany desk. "Your aunt was named sole beneficiary of the property. You receive a small trust fund, but the house, my childhood home, the Victorian manor on Oleander Street where my mother had raised me alone after Dad died, where I'd learned to bake in the sunlit kitchen, where I'd cried over my first heartbreak on the wraparound porch, where my mother had taken her last breath in the master bedroom just 72 hours ago. Gone." I looked at Aunt Daisy sitting beside me, her face a mask of practiced sorrow. She wore black Chanel and dabbed at dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. My mother's sister. The woman who'd visited maybe twice a year, always with her hand out, always needing money for some emergency. "I know this must be difficult, sweetheart," Aunt Daisy cooed, reaching for my hand. I jerked away. Her eyes flashed just for a second, with something cold and victorious before the mask of sympathy returned. "Your mother and I discussed this at length," she continued, her voice syrupy. "She knew you were young, irresponsible. She worried you'd squander everything. The house needs someone mature to manage it, someone who understands its value." Irresponsible. The word hit me like a slap. I was 26 years old. I had a master's degree in finance. I'd been working at Morrison & Associates for 3 years, managing portfolios worth millions. But to Aunt Daisy, I would always be the burden, the niece who took up space in her perfect sister's life. "When can I collect my things?" My voice sounded distant, hollow. Mr. Hendricks cleared his throat. "Well, as the new owner, Mrs. Thompson has requested that you vacate within 30 days. 30 days to pack up a lifetime, to erase myself from the only home I'd ever known." "Actually," Aunt Daisy said, examining her manicured nails, "I've been thinking. Why wait? Camilla dear, you're young and mobile. You can stay with friends, can't you? I'd like to begin renovations next week." The room tilted. Renovations. She wanted to tear apart my mother's house before the funeral flowers had even wilted. "You want me out? Before the funeral?" I whispered. "The funeral is in 2 days, darling. That gives you plenty of time." She smiled. That patronizing smile I'd seen 1,000 times. "Unless you need help packing, I could hire someone." "No." I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Both of them stared at me, Mr. Hendricks with concern, Aunt Daisy with barely concealed irritation. "I'll be out tomorrow," I said. Each word felt like glass in my throat. "You can have your house." Aunt Daisy's smile widened. "Oh, sweetheart, don't be dramatic. I'm doing this for your own good. Your mother knew you weren't ready for this kind of responsibility. Some people are just born to be taken care of. There's no shame in being a burden." A burden. There it was, the word she'd used my entire life. When I'd needed braces as a kid, when I'd wanted to go to college, when I'd asked to borrow her car for prom because Mum was working double shifts. Always that word, delivered with a sympathetic head tilt that made it sound like kindness instead of cruelty. I looked at her sitting there in my dead mother's lawyer's office, already spending my inheritance in her mind, already redecorating the rooms where I'd grown up. And something inside me went very, very cold. "You're right," I heard myself say. "I've been a burden long enough." The tremor in my hands stopped. The crushing weight on my chest lifted. In its place settled something sharp and clear and absolutely certain. Aunt Daisy preened, thinking she'd won. She had no idea what I'd just decided. I stood in my mother's bedroom. No, Aunt Daisy's bedroom now, and let the anger crystallize into something harder, something useful. The room still smelled like lavender and vanilla. Mum's reading glasses sat on the nightstand next to a half-finished mystery novel. Her slippers peeked out from under the bed, everything frozen in time, waiting for someone who would never come back. I opened her closet and found what I was looking for in the back corner, a small fireproof safe. My hands didn't shake as I entered the combination. My birthday. Inside were the documents I'd been looking for. Property deeds, bank statements, insurance policies, and underneath everything, a letter in my mother's handwriting. My dearest Camilla, I couldn't read it. Not yet. If I read it now, I'd break. And I couldn't afford to break. I photographed everything with my phone, then locked the safe and returned it exactly as I'd found it. Aunt Daisy would check, I knew. She'd been in this room already, I could tell. The sheets were smoothed too carefully. A drawer was slightly ajar that Mum always kept shut. She'd been looking for something. Good. Let her look. I moved through the house like a ghost, photographing everything. The crack in the living room ceiling that indicated foundation issues, the water stains behind the wallpaper in the downstairs bathroom, the ancient electrical panel that was definitely not up to code, the beautiful Victorian facade hiding dozens of expensive problems. My phone buzzed. Text from Aunt Daisy. How's packing going? Remember, tomorrow by 5 p.m. I have contractors coming. I typed back, almost done. Thank you for everything. The lies tasted like victory. At midnight, I sat in my cramped studio apartment, the place I kept even after Mum got sick, knowing I'd need somewhere that was just mine. My laptop screen cast blue light across my face as I dug through public records. Aunt Daisy thought I was irresponsible, immature, a burden. She had no idea what I was capable of. The mortgage history on the house made my blood run cold. 6 months ago, the same time Mum's will was changed, there had been a quiet transaction. A reverse mortgage taken out in my mother's name. Not unusual for elderly homeowners, except for one detail. The beneficiary of the loan proceeds wasn't my mother. It was Aunt Daisy. $300,000 transferred directly to her account. And the paperwork was signed by Mum, or someone claiming to be Mum, just 2 weeks after her cancer diagnosis, when she was heavily medicated and barely conscious. You bitch, I whispered to my empty apartment. But that wasn't all. I cross-referenced Aunt Daisy's financials. Public records were a beautiful thing when you knew where to look. She was drowning in debt, gambling debts, based on the court records I found from her divorce last year. Her ex-husband had cited her compulsive gambling and financial irresponsibility in the filing. The house wasn't about family legacy. It was about liquidating an asset before her creditors could seize it. She'd probably already lined up a buyer, probably planned to flip it fast and disappear with the cash. I opened a new tab and searched for foreclosure listings in our county. Then I cross-referenced them with tax liens. Then I started making calls, at midnight leaving voicemails for people who specialised in distressed property sales. By 3 a.m, I had a plan. By 4 a.m, I had 3 investors lined up and interested. By 5 a.m, I drafted a proposal that would make Aunt Daisy's eyes water. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. The cold fury in my chest was better than caffeine. The church was packed. Mum had been loved, truly loved, by so many people. Her students from the elementary school where she'd taught for 30 years, her book club friends, the neighbours she'd baked cookies for every Christmas. I sat in the front pew in my black dress, my face carefully composed. Aunt Daisy sat beside me, sobbing theatrically into her handkerchief. She was my only sister, she wailed to anyone who would listen. My dear, dear sister. What will I do without her? What would she do? She'd already done it. Stolen a house, forged documents, thrown me out with nowhere to go. During the eulogy, I felt Aunt Daisy's hand on mine. Her fingers were cold. I know this is hard for you, sweetheart, she murmured, but don't worry. I'll take care of everything now. You just focus on healing. I turned to look at her. Really look at her. She was 53 years old, but looked older, the years of stress and bad decisions etched into her face. She wore expensive clothes, but they hung wrong, bought with money she didn't have to impress people she didn't like. She thought she'd won. Thank you, Aunt Daisy, I said softly, for everything. You've taught me so much. Her smile was radiant. She had no idea I was telling the truth. After the service, at the reception in the church basement, I overheard her talking to her friend Linda. The house will sell for at least $800,000, she was saying, her voice low but eager. I already have a developer interested. He wants to tear it down and build condos. Can you imagine? I'll be debt-free and have money left over. Maybe I'll travel. Paris? Milan? Linda made impressed noises. What about Camilla? Aunt Daisy waved a dismissive hand. She'll be fine. Young people are resilient. Besides, her mother left her a small trust fund. She's not homeless. But didn't Emily want Camilla to have the house? There was a pause. When Aunt Daisy spoke again, her voice had an edge. Emily wasn't thinking clearly at the end. The cancer, the medications, she didn't know what she was doing. I had to step in. Someone had to be the adult. I stood behind a pillar, my fists clenched so tight my nails drew blood from my palms, not thinking clearly. My mother, who'd taught third graders to read for 3 decades, who'd balanced a household budget on a teacher's salary and still managed to save enough to put me through college, who'd organised her own funeral down to the flower arrangements before the cancer took her voice. That woman hadn't been thinking clearly. I walked away before I did something I'd regret. But I'd heard enough. 3 weeks later, I sat across from Mr. Hendricks again. But this time, I'd brought my own lawyer. I'm sorry, I don't understand, Mr. Hendricks was saying, his face pale. What do you mean there's a tax lien on the property? My lawyer, Veronica Chen, a shark in Prada heels, slid the documents across his desk. The property at 1847 Oleander Street has an outstanding tax debt of $47,000, dating back 3 years. The county has filed a lien and initiated foreclosure proceedings. That's impossible. Mrs. Thompson has owned the property for less than a month. The debt predates her ownership, Veronica said smoothly, which means it's now her responsibility. The county sent multiple notices to the property address, but they were never responded to. Because Aunt Daisy had been too busy planning her renovation and counting her money to check the mail properly. Mr. Hendricks shuffled through the papers, his hands shaking slightly. This will destroy the sale. No buyer will touch a property with a tax line. Precisely, I said. It was the first time I'd spoken. Unless she pays the debt immediately, which she couldn't do, because every penny she had was already spent or promised to creditors. Mr. Hendricks looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Miss Camilla, did you know about this? I did my research, I said simply. My mother's files were very thorough. That was partly true. I'd found the first notice buried in Mom's desk. The rest I'd uncovered myself, digging through county records, cross-referencing dates, finding the paperwork trail that Aunt Daisy had been too arrogant to look for. What do you want? Mr. Hendricks asked quietly. Nothing, I said, standing up. I just thought you should know. As Mom's estate lawyer, you have a responsibility to ensure all debts are disclosed. Veronica and I left him sitting there, staring at the documents that had just destroyed Aunt Daisy's plans. In the elevator, Veronica grinned at me. "You're cold, Camilla. I like it." "I'm just getting started," I said. Aunt Daisy called me that night screaming, "What did you do? What the hell did you do?" I put her on speaker and continued chopping vegetables for dinner. "I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean." "The tax lien. You knew about it. You knew and you didn't tell me." "Why would I know about property taxes on your house?" I kept my voice calm, innocent. "I'm just an irresponsible burden, remember?" Silence. Then, "This isn't funny, Camilla. I could lose everything." "Yes," I said, "you could." "I need money. The county wants $47,000 by the end of the month, or they'll foreclose." "That's unfortunate." "Camilla." Her voice changed, became wheedling. "Sweetheart, I know we've had our differences, but we're family. Your mother would want you to help me." The knife in my hand stilled. "Don't you dare," I said softly. "Don't you dare use her name. I'll pay you back, I swear. Once the house sells." "The house won't sell. Not with a lien." "Then I'll get a loan. I'll figure something out. Just help me this once. Like you helped me." I set down the knife. "Like you helped me when you forged Mum's signature on that reverse mortgage, when you changed her will while she was dying, when you called me a burden and threw me out of my childhood home 3 days after I buried her." Dead silence. "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally said, her voice strangled. "Yes, you do. I have copies of everything. The mortgage paperwork, the will modification, the medical records showing Mom was too sedated to sign anything coherently during the week you had her sign over the house." "You can't prove—" "I already have. My lawyer has everything. So does the State Attorney General's office. Elder abuse is a serious crime, Aunt Daisy, especially when there's financial fraud involved." I heard her breathing, fast and panicked. "What do you want?" she whispered. "Nothing," I said. "Nothing at all. Enjoy your house." I hung up. My hands were shaking now, not with fear, but with the sheer adrenaline of finally fighting back. The foreclosure auction was held on the courthouse steps on a cold November morning. I arrived early, dressed in a charcoal suit that meant business. Around me clustered the usual suspects: real estate investors with their clipboards, house flippers looking for a deal, attorneys representing out-of-state buyers, and Aunt Daisy. She stood off to the side, her face gaunt and pale. She'd lost weight. Her clothes hung on her like someone else's skin. When she saw me, her eyes widened. "You," she hissed, pushing through the crowd. "You did this. You destroyed me." "No," I said calmly. "You destroyed yourself. I just stopped letting you destroy me too. That house is mine. My sister gave it to me." "Your sister was coerced and manipulated while dying of cancer. My lawyers are very interested in that." Her face crumpled. "Please, Camilla, please. If I lose the house, I lose everything. I have debts. People I owe money to. Bad people." For a moment, just a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered her words. "Some people are born to be taken care of. There's no shame in being a burden." "Then you should have thought of that before you gambled away your life," I said. The auctioneer called for attention. The crowd quieted. "We are here today for the foreclosure auction of 1847 Oleander Street, a 3-bedroom Victorian home with significant historic value. Due to outstanding tax debts, the property is being sold as is. Bidding will start at $50,000. $50,000. For a house worth $800,000 once the repairs were done." Hands shot up around me. The bidding was fierce. 60,000, 70, 85. Real estate investors knew a deal when they saw one. I waited. At 200,000, most of the crowd dropped out. Only 3 bidders remained. A developer, a house-flipping couple, and a man in an expensive suit who I didn't recognize. At 300,000, the developer shook his head and stepped back. At 350, the couple hesitated, consulted with each other, and withdrew. Just me and the man in the suit now. 375,000, he said. 400,000, I countered. Aunt Daisy made a choking sound. The man looked at me, assessing. Then he smiled slightly and shook his head, stepping back. Going once, the auctioneer called. Going twice. Wait! Aunt Daisy screamed. She pushed forward, grabbing the auctioneer's arm. You can't do this. This is my house. My sister left it to me. Ma'am, please step back, the auctioneer said firmly. She's sabotaging me. My niece is sabotaging me. This is illegal. Ma'am, this is a legal foreclosure proceeding due to unpaid property taxes. If you had issue with the lien, you should have resolved it before today. Security moved toward her. Aunt Daisy turned to me, tears streaming down her face. How could you? She sobbed. After everything I did for you. After I took you in when you had nothing. You never took me in, I said quietly. My mother raised me alone while you visited twice a year asking for money. You never did anything for me except make me feel small. Sold, the auctioneer's voice rang out, to bidder number 47 for $400,000. Bidder 47, me. The crowd applauded. It was done. Aunt Daisy collapsed to her knees on the courthouse steps, sobbing. People stared. Some looked sympathetic. Most just looked uncomfortable and moved away. I walked over to her and crouched down so we were eye to eye. You called me a burden, I said softly. You said I wasn't ready for responsibility, that some people are born to be taken care of. She looked up at me, mascara streaming down her face. But you were wrong, I continued. I'm not a burden. I'm my mother's daughter, and she taught me never to let people take what's mine. I stood up and walked away, leaving her crying on the cold stone steps. The key turned in the lock of 1847 Oleander Street for the first time in 3 months. I stepped inside my childhood home, my home now, legally and completely, and breathed in the familiar smell of old wood and vanilla. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Aunt Daisy had started her renovations, but abandoned them when the money ran out. Paint cans sat in corners, drop cloths covered furniture, but underneath it all was still my mother's house. I walked through each room slowly, touching walls, remembering. The kitchen where Mum taught me to make her famous apple pie. The living room where we'd watched movies on rainy Sundays. The porch where we'd sat on summer evenings, talking about everything and nothing. In the master bedroom, I finally opened Mum's letter, the one I'd photographed from her safe but hadn't been able to read. My dearest Camilla, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry I couldn't be stronger, couldn't fight harder to stay with you. But I need you to know something important. Daisy came to me when I was very sick. She said she would take care of everything, the house, the bills, you. She seemed so sincere, and I was so tired. I signed papers she put in front of me because I trusted her. But then the fog cleared for a moment, and I realised what I'd done. I tried to change it, tried to call my lawyer, but I was so weak. The cancer was eating me alive, and I couldn't think straight anymore. I failed you, sweetheart. I let her manipulate me, and I'm so sorry. But I know you, my brilliant girl. You're stronger than you think, smarter than anyone gives you credit for. You have your father's mind and my stubborn heart. Whatever happens, I know you'll find a way through it. The house isn't what matters. You are. You always have been. All my love forever and always, Mum. I sat on her bed and cried for the first time since she died. Great, heaving sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for the mother I'd lost, for the years Aunt Daisy had stolen from us with her manipulation, for the girl I'd been who believed family meant something. But mostly, I cried with relief, because Mum had known. In her last clear moment, she'd known what Daisy had done, and she'd trusted me to fix it. 3 months after the auction, I was sitting on the newly refinished porch when a car pulled up. Aunt Daisy got out slowly like an old woman. She'd aged 10 years in 3 months. Her clothes were cheap now, ill-fitting. Her hair needed dyeing. She looked like what she was. Broken. She walked up the path and stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. "May I come up?" she asked quietly. I considered, then nodded. She sat in the chair across from me, Mum's favourite chair, and stared out at the street. "The house looks beautiful," she finally said. "You fixed everything." I did. The electrical, the foundation, the roof, all of it. Yes. "Where did you get the money?" "The trust fund Mum left me was larger than you thought. Turns out she was better at saving than you gave her credit for. Plus, I took out a mortgage. The bank was happy to loan to someone with my credit and job history." Aunt Daisy flinched. We sat in silence. A bird sang somewhere in the oak tree. A car drove past. Normal neighbourhood sounds on a normal day. "I lost everything," she said finally. "My house, my car, my savings. I'm living in a studio apartment and working retail." "I know. The people I owed money to, they weren't gentle about collecting." I said nothing. "I deserve this," she continued, her voice breaking. "I know I do. What I did to Emily, to you, it was unforgivable." "Yes," I agreed. "It was..." She looked at me then, really looked at me. "You've changed. You're harder now." "No," I said. "I'm exactly who I always was. You just never bothered to look." "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for all of it, for calling you a burden, for making you feel small, for stealing what should have been yours. I'm so sorry." I studied her face, looking for lies, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine remorse. "Why did you do it?" I asked. "Why did you hate me so much?" She was quiet for a long time. "I didn't hate you," she finally said. "I hated what you represented. You were everything I wasn't. Smart, ambitious, loved. Emily poured everything into you while I destroyed everything I touched, every relationship, every job, every chance. And watching you succeed while I failed, it made me bitter. So you tried to destroy me too." "Yes." She wiped her eyes. "God help me, yes." I stood up and walked to the porch railing, looking out at the garden Mum had planted. It needed work, but the roses were blooming anyway, pushing through the weeds. "There's a studio apartment above the garage," I heard myself say. "It needs renovation, but it has good bones. Plumbing and electrical are separate from the main house." Aunt Daisy went very still. "Camilla?" "I'm not offering it out of kindness," I interrupted, "or forgiveness. I'm not sure I'll ever forgive you." "Then why?" I turned to face her. "Because my mother would have wanted me to. Because despite everything, you're still her sister. Because showing mercy doesn't make me weak. It makes me strong enough to break the cycle of cruelty." Tears streamed down her face. "I don't deserve..." "No, you don't. But that's the point, isn't it? Mercy isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to be better than the person who hurt you." She stood up, trembling. "What do you want in return?" "Work. Real work. Help me renovate that apartment. Help me with the garden. Prove to me that you can be someone other than the bitter woman who called me a burden. And if I fail, then you leave. Simple as that." She nodded slowly. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Bring work gloves." After she left, I sat back down in Mum's chair and watched the sun set over Oleander Street. The house glowed warm and golden in the fading light. My phone buzzed. A text from Veronica. "You really taking her in? After everything?" I typed back, "I'm not taking her in. I'm giving her a chance to earn her way back. There's a difference. You're either a saint or a fool. Neither. I'm just my mother's daughter." Epilogue, 6 months later. The studio apartment above the garage was finally finished. Aunt Daisy had worked on it every day for 6 months, sanding, painting, installing fixtures. She'd shown up every morning at 6 a.m. without fail, even when I could tell she was exhausted. She'd changed. Not completely. I didn't think people ever really changed completely, but she was trying. She'd started going to Gamblers Anonymous. She'd taken a bookkeeping course at the community college. She even volunteered at Mum's old elementary school, reading to the third graders. "It's done," she said, standing in the doorway of the apartment. "What do you think?" I walked through, inspecting everything. The floors gleamed, the windows sparkled. She'd even planted flowers in the window boxes. "It's beautiful," I admitted. "Thank you for giving me the chance." "Don't thank me yet. You're paying rent, market rate." She smiled, a real smile, not the fake one from before. I wouldn't have it any other way. After she left, I stood in the main house's kitchen, where Mum's cookbook still sat on the counter. I opened it to her apple pie recipe and started pulling out ingredients. As I worked, I thought about revenge and mercy, about justice and forgiveness. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd taken everything from Aunt Daisy just as she'd tried to take everything from me. But somewhere along the way, I'd realised that destruction wasn't enough. Mum wouldn't have wanted me to become the kind of person who crushed others for the satisfaction of winning. She taught me to be strong, yes, to fight for what was mine, but also to be wise enough to know when fighting was over and building could begin. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find a woman about my age standing there with a clipboard. "Camilla Torres, I'm with the Historical Preservation Society. We've been reviewing properties in this neighbourhood, and we'd like to nominate your house for historic landmark status." I blinked. "Really?" "It's one of the finest examples of Victorian architecture in the county. If you're interested, a landmark status comes with tax benefits and restoration grants, though there are restrictions on modifications." "I'd be honoured," I said. "My mother loved this house. She'd want it preserved." After she left, I went back to my pie, smiling. Aunt Daisy had tried to tear this house down to build something soulless and profitable. Instead, it would stand for generations as a testament to my mother's memory. I slid the pie into the oven and sat down at the kitchen table where Mum and I had shared 1,000 meals. Outside, the sun was setting over Oleander Street, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I saw what you did, what you built. Your mother would be so proud of you." It was signed, Mr. Hendricks. I smiled and typed back, "She taught me well." And she had. Mum had taught me that strength wasn't about crushing your enemies. It was about being strong enough to show mercy when you'd won. That justice wasn't just about taking back what was stolen. It was about building something better from the ashes. Aunt Daisy had called me a burden, but I'd proven I was anything but. I was a woman who fought for what was right, who honoured her mother's memory, who understood that the sweetest revenge wasn't destruction. It was success. The house settled around me with familiar creaks and sighs, and I breathed in the smell of baking apples and cinnamon. I was home, and no one would ever take that away from me again.